Welcome back to Mik'd Up. We are excited to have our next conversation with college baseball analyst. Plus tools in the charisma category, 80 grade and toughness. So we're going to test all of those things on the show. Mike Rooney, a.k.a. Runes, one of the many voices of D1 baseball. They have a podcast together. We're excited to have this conversation. I enjoy talking to all you guys. Welcome on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I've had quite the day on Twitter, compliments of the LSU fan base. Self-inflicted, of course. I did this to myself last year. I inflamed the Tennessee. I don't consider myself like shock jock or anything, but I made a comment last year that had the Tennessee fan base not feeling very good about me. And then today I did it with LSU. The funny thing is the clip,
right?
Like we clip our own podcast and they clip me to be controversial. Like it's my own company clipping me to get worn out. But it's all good, right? Like if it helps the enterprise, I'm for it.
Well, listen, I watched it. Obviously, we're in the media business. I don't like to consider us media people. We're just having conversations similar to what y'all have, right? Y'all are fans of the game of baseball. You have conversations open for discussion. I watched the interview, especially the LSU part, very intently. And you admittedly, before you came out with your takes, said, I'm just nitpicking here. Like, I'm not saying that it is a huge concern, but if I had to pick a concern, which is a question that a lot of people are asking, and those are some of the things that you mentioned, right? And we're going to get into that, but one of the ones that you mentioned that I believe that is a legitimate concern, right? Because it hasn't been very good the last few weeks, is their Sunday starter, the third starter at LSU, right? Thatcher Hurd came in, very highly touted. He was supposed to be that guy. I still think he's going to be that guy, but right now, he hasn't pitched up to his capabilities. His abilities on the mound right now, or his performance on the mound, hasn't matched his talent. I think that's going to come, right? It's just one of those things that you have to go through and get better. He's going to be better for it. But as far as the Sunday rotation spot, because LSU's had 3 series and 2 of the 3 they lost on that Sunday. What is your take on that? How do you fix that? Do you see a Johnny Holstaff? I mean, you're this weekend, Christian Little's getting that Saturday start. What's your opinion on that third starter?
Yeah, I think, Jay, the one thing we know about Jay Johnson is, this dude, if he sleeps.
I don't think he does that. I do not think he does that.
Yeah. He gets up, he wakes up thinking about, the Sunday starter at LSU, and he goes to bed thinking about that, right? This dude thinks about it nonstop. And I think LSU's offense is so good. If they can have a Sunday starter that does, right now, Thatcher Hurd basically lit the stadium on fire on Sunday. The offense never had a chance. They just, when we were in Round Rock, we saw Riley Cooper. I'm a huge Riley Cooper fan. I didn't mind that idea because at least you're going to have a chance. Now, Iowa really took advantage of some things with the inside game against Riley Cooper, and that Trey Morgan was in left field at the time, and that probably colors my judgment on some stuff too. But Thatcher Hurd was so good on the West Coast last year, and then this fall when Jay wasn't telling us, oh, he's a lock for Sunday, you're kind of like, oh man, looking back, that was a clue that it's not clicking for him. So I don't know, Garrett Edwards has been great. They just need somebody to not explode the game on Sundays.
I agree, and I think that Christian Little has struggled a little bit in the back end of the bullpen lately. Early in the season, he was great. Maybe moving him to that starter role and saying, hey, listen, you don't have to be absolutely perfect for this inning. You can grind out a few innings. Maybe that's better. Maybe that changes his mentality as a starter, and he's able to get you 5. I'll tell you what, a dark horse for me, at least on our side, is Griffin Herring. I know he's a freshman, and he hasn't thrown a ton, but he looked the last 2 times he's been out have been high leverage situations. He's been very impressive. And the rumor is the longer he pitches in a game, the better he gets, and he's able to sustain the velocity that he's got. So maybe over time, as he continues to get more comfortable, he ends up being that lefty or that third starter. You also mentioned the infield defense, and I think that's the one where everybody started coming at you, right? I think that's the one that you stepped on the ant pile a little bit there. And they're the number 1 team defensively as far as fielding percentage. Obviously, you mentioned the range of Tommy White, and you mentioned the range of Gavin Dugas. I haven't, as a fan and obviously as a baseball guy, I haven't seen the range become an issue. I do agree with you, though, that when Trey Morgan is at first base, the defense is significantly better. What's your take on that? I know you talk a little about the small ball, and you talk about how that could give them issues. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I just, so Aaron Fitt, it's funny you say that, Mikey. Like, Aaron Fitt called me out on that on our podcast. It didn't make the clip, of course, but, it's like, I knew that LSU was fielding well. I didn't realize number one in the country. But I would say that, nobody can look me in the eye and say that, hey, their infield defense is fine with Jared Jones at first compared to Trey Morgan at first. Trey Morgan's the best defensive first baseman in the country, like hard stop, right? So he goes to left field, and Jared Jones is a big kid. But, and Dugas is one of the great stories in college baseball. Like, I would trust him with anything, but he hasn't played infield in 3 years. Right. And then, I love Jordan Thompson, but he's got 35 career errors. He's been a very streaky defender. And, Tommy White's sure-handed, but no range. And so I saw Iowa exploit that. Hey, here's the other thing. Brady Neal's a true freshman catcher. Iowa pressured LSU with running game, first and third offense, bunt for a hit, those types of things. Is that a formula that is foolproof against LSU? Of course not. But I saw it work with my own eyes, and if we're nitpicking LSU, I think a team that could, again, if you're Jay Johnson, you got to be thinking about this. What if NC State 2021 shows up here? What if Michigan 2019 shows up here? What if Notre Dame 2022 shows up here? Are we ready for all of that? We're going to be more talented than them, no doubt about it, but are we ready for the way they play? Now the other question is, are they ready for LSU? The answer is probably no, but, if we're nitpicking, that's what we're talking about.
Mike, you spoke about the offense that LSU possesses. I wouldn't say in question, but the one spot where we've seen somewhat of a revolving door is the leadoff spot. If you woke up tomorrow as the head coach of LSU, what would you do with that spot?
Man, I mean, I might hit Dylan Cruz there just because I want him to get as many at bats as possible. I mean, what Dylan Cruz is doing right now is such a joke. Like, I've tried it. You guys are college baseball experts. Obviously, you lived it, but I've tried to explain to people, like, hey, if you're an accountant and I came up to you and said, hey, if you're the best accountant in the world for the next 4 months, I'll give you $9 million. Like, you wouldn't sleep for 4 months. Right. And this dude is like hitting 5, whatever he's hitting. So, you hate to eliminate RBI situations for him, but if you don't have a true blue leadoff hitter and he's a good runner and he runs great at bats, I might consider that. I might consider Gavin Dugas too, because he same thing, like, sets a great tone for your team. I think what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't force a leadoff hitter and then you're pushing these really good hitters back. So yeah, maybe Dylan Cruz. I don't know. That's kind of weird, but maybe.
So as I've heard it, you are not sold on LSU in tight situations and tight games and pressure-packed moments. If you saw them cracking in those spots, where would you look at first, and what do you think would be the breaking point for them in games that are played in that manner?
Yeah, I think I would rephrase that a little bit, Jared. I would say that I just wish LSU was playing more of those, kind of get your heart rate up games. What I'm worried about LSU is they're just beating everyone to a pulp. And even several of their losses were really lopsided. So, and like Tennessee, those were tight games, but I didn't feel like Tennessee was playing great. I think those were tight games because Tennessee's really talented, but Tennessee's just kicking the ball around. They don't know who they are offensively. I think the best version of Tennessee's 2 months away because of all the turnover in the youth. So I think, if I were to nitpick LSU, it would be the infield defense. Like, are they going to really turn a double play in a tight spot in a 1-run game in the 8th inning? I don't know. We haven't seen them have to do that yet. The bullpen, the roles are not clearly defined. What if they're in game 3 of a super regional and somehow somebody got to Ty Floyd and it's 1-1 and you're playing game 3 of a super. We don't know who the starter is. Let's say Garrett Edwards already pitched a bunch that weekend. Maybe Herring's now the starter. So who's throwing 6 through 9 in game 3 of a super regional? I mean, Riley Cooper could do it. Like, he's as cool as a customer as it gets. It wouldn't spook him at all. But, again, I say that, guys, I could pick any team in the country and nitpick that same stuff. The only team maybe I could not nitpick in that way is Wake Forest. Kind of has all those ducks in a row right now, but they're as good as they are. Their upside is not as overwhelming as LSU's.
Right, and to be honest with you, I do agree with you in that sense of, like, hey, if everything goes to hell and you've used a bunch of guys and you're kind of grinding this thing out and you need somebody to close that last game out, like who has that guy? Nobody's really stepped up. I tell you a guy that you really probably should keep a bigger eye on, and I think you're going to start seeing him throw a lot more, is Gavin Guidry, right? He threw third inning and a third last night, struck out 3. Jay has come on the show a few times and talked about how much he likes his stuff. He's a mid-90s guy on the mound as far as velo goes. So he's a guy that if you can see him start to progress, maybe you can see him some in high leverage situations. The problem with college baseball, and it's better than it was when we were there, right? But the bullpen is the biggest separator from the talent and SEC baseball and AA, AAA, right? Like the top tier talent, the starters and the lineups are all super talented, but it's the depth of the bullpen. So that's always going to be the question, right? You talked about Wake Forest. You've talked about some of these other teams. We've mentioned Tennessee. LSU plays South Carolina this weekend. South Carolina, starting tomorrow. South Carolina is the number 6 team in the country. They are surprised to everybody. I don't think anybody thought that they'd be there. They're taking the same medicine that Texas A&M took last year. Hey, we're going to go get these guys in the portal and we're going to hit on them. And they're going to hit. They're going to be an older group, and they're going to put up some numbers and give us a shot. What have you seen from South Carolina, and is what they're doing, is that sustainable?
It's a great question. I mean, the one thing that's different about South Carolina this year than over the last couple of years is they're healthier on the mound, and they're really good on the mound. Like, South Carolina's got a legit rotation. Nobody's got a Paul Skenes, but South Carolina's rotation can kind of trade punches with anybody, and they've kind of cobbled together a pretty reliable bullpen. The one thing about their offense is I worry that they're a little bit power dependent. Like if they don't hit home runs, can they generate offense? But I would say it's a very good team. They've got a million hit by pitches, and so it's a team that's got a little swagger and toughness, and you can tell they're very connected. They had a really good series with Missouri. They didn't blink at all. So again, I think it's a really fun series because we're going to learn how good South Carolina is, and it's another opportunity for us, like anything we're nitpicking on LSU. Are those real things, or are those just, there's a perfect team and we're just nitpicking?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the Alabama deal in football. Like, they're beating everybody by a whole bunch. Oh, what's going to happen when they get in? Like, it's easy to nitpick, and that's what we're supposed to do, right? Like, you're supposed to try to find a flaw on these teams that really haven't shown many flaws. Like, that's what our business is, right? And we talk a lot about SEC baseball because we're in it, and I believe it's the premier baseball conference in the country, right? ACC's been pretty good, right? Wake Forest has been a surprise. They've been, I think they're number 2 or 3 in the country now.
Number 2, yeah.
What have you seen as far as college baseball goes, right? Like last year, a couple years ago, you saw a lot of some of these mid-major schools have a lot of guys, right? They're very good. They're competitive. Southern Miss made that run. There's national seed, all these things. But then with the portal, all these guys get transferred out and they go to these bigger schools. And I'm not seeing as many of these smaller schools make the noise. Are you seeing that around college baseball?
Yeah, the portal makes it harder for the small teams because they get a good player through the recruiting process and then they develop them, and then next thing you know, he's at a Power 5 program. But I would tell you guys, the separator for the smaller schools are Boston College is a Power 5. I get it, but it's arguably the northernmost Power 5, and they've got 3 grad transfers who are 5th-year kids on their pitching staff, which is always a problem for them, who are Division III transfers. But these are kids that have pitched a ton of college baseball. They don't throw 95, but you're not going to get a fastball and a fastball count. They can cross-count you with anybody. They're 23, 24 years old. So we're seeing some of the kind of non-Power 4, because it's really Power 4 in college baseball, if we're being honest.
Right.
We're seeing some of those teams just go to the older kids and try to run a bunch of 23 and 24-year-olds at you. Hey, Texas State did that last year and almost popped in Omaha. UConn has a nice formula going that way. I think the other part of your question, Mikey, is, hey, there's less room in professional baseball now than before. There's less teams. There's a smaller draft. And so the players, the caliber of player we're seeing in college baseball now has never been better. I mean, think about what you guys saw for Tennessee and LSU. Did anybody throw a fastball below 93 miles an hour?
Nope.
I mean, it was a joke. It was like 95 to 100, like you're watching a big league game. So like Dylan Cruz, what's he doing in college, right? It's
right.
But
Right.
but hey, there's less room in pro baseball right now, and I think it's a really good thing for college baseball.
You mentioned Dylan Cruz. You've mentioned Paul Skenes, right? Obviously, we get the privilege of watching these kids play every week. Midweek games, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. I've got to watch Dylan for 3 years. We get to see Paul for this 1 year, and he's going to be gone, right? From what I've seen from Paul, he may be the best pitcher, talent-wise, stuff-wise, maybe ever to come out of college baseball. And that's a bold statement. I know Strasburg was kind of the guy, but watching Strasburg, because Strasburg he was a junior when I was a freshman. And so I watched him, and then watching Skenes, I think Skenes has better stuff right now as we're speaking today, right? And Dylan Cruz, to me, is the best offensive player to come through LSU. I think that when it's all said and done, he's going to have some of the best numbers. He has no business being in college. My question to you is, you're the Pittsburgh, and I've had my thoughts on this, on how it could go either way. If you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, are you taking Dylan Cruz 1-1, or are you taking Paul Skenes 1-1?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're feeling really good that you could choose, right? Like, it's awesome. And I think if you're the Nationals who pick second, you're like, hot damn, pardon my French,
Right.
but it's like, yeah, I'll take whatever. Pirates, knock yourselves out. We'll take whatever you don't like, right? It's
Right.
Those are 2 1-1s. And so if I was the Pirates, I'd take Dylan Cruz, because I just think the math tells you that taking the position player is it's lower risk and higher upside. But if I was the Nationals and Paul Skenes got to me at 2, I'm taking him in a hot second. Like, I'm not even blinking at that, because, it's like the Andy Bennis comp, the, Mark Pryor comp, the Strasburg comp. I mean, yeah, and he's an incredible kid. Yeah, heck yeah, I love Paul Skenes.
And I may be overthinking this, and I want to give you my opinion on this, or my positioning, and tell me if you think that I'm off base on this, right? So, and I could be wrong, because the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they have not proven that they are trying to win baseball games in Major League Baseball. Like, they can say they are, but they haven't, shown me anything. But with that said, they have 3 specifically, maybe 4 unbelievably young, talented guys that they have for a really long time. You have O'Neal Cruz at shortstop, who's a generational guy. He's 6'7". You have Hayes at third base, who's a Gold Glover. You have in center field, you have Brian Reynolds, who came in from Vandy. Now they're trying to trade him. Now they're bringing up these conversations about having another conversation about extending him. Let's say they extend him. So you have these 3 superstar young guys. Do you say, okay, maybe these guys are ready to start competing and getting us to the next level, and maybe we need a number 1 ace? And for me, that would be the reason why they would take Skenes first. I'm with you, though. I do think that Dylan Cruz is the guy. Am my thought process off base? Am I overthinking the GM role a little bit there?
I think not overthinking it, but I think they just look at it differently. Like, the teams, when they have their analysts, they just always take the position player, because the math tells them that you take the position player. And the Pirates really aren't settled in the outfield, in my opinion, outside of Reynolds, who you mentioned. Like Travis Swaggerty, who the kid they drafted first round out of, I think, South Alabama a few years ago. He had a good spring, but he's been injured a lot. But the Nationals are the team that they will buck the trend, and they will take a pitcher 1-1. So I think if it was flipped, I think if the Nationals were picking first, I think you're right. I think the Nationals would take Skenes, and then the Pirates would take Cruz second. But I think, I just think the way these teams are wired with, all these analytics and algorithms, they're always wired to take the position player.
Bringing it back to college baseball, we're talking about seeing a Dylan Cruz playing pretty much every day. We're talking about seeing a Paul Skenes throw pretty much every Friday. On the national stage right now, who else do you see that could possibly be giving them, I guess, dark horse competition for best player in college baseball right now, or even maybe jumping them in that 1-1 spot?
Yeah, they're their own tier I think it's not close really, but I would tell you, like, as far as like fun players like Golden Spikes, that type of stuff. Yeah. I mean, Jack Caglione at Florida has cooled off, but it's still, the dude's going to hit 30 home runs. Right. And he touches 98 every time out. So he's a really fun story. The thing about Wake Forest that's interesting is they've got, this incredible rotation. All 3 of their rotation, arms have an ERA under 2. They've got a closer in Caminasi. They've got that third baseman Wilkin, who's got like 16 home runs. They've got the first baseman Kurtz, who's 6'5", 235, and he's a
Where
big
are these
threat
guys
too,
coming
so.
from? Where are these guys coming from?
Wake Forest recruits up and down the eastern seaboard,
okay.
Wilkins, Florida. Kurtz is from Philly. He's from Pennsylvania. It's crazy, but I mean, I don't know. Like nobody's got Skenes and Cruz though, right? Like that's unique. And even like the next part of the draft, you're talking about like the shortstop at Grand Canyon, Jacob Wilson, who's Jack Wilson's son. You're talking about Jacob Gonzalez at Ole Miss. But again, like you can't take those two kids before Skenes and Cruz.
Right.
What's the deal with Ole Miss? What's Ole Miss is? I mean, now I don't want to say much because last year they stunk and then they didn't stink anymore, and then it can happen. But like, what is going on over there?
You guys know. I don't care. Ole Miss has got a legit offense. Like
right.
in the non-conference, we were talking about, hey, is that one of the best offenses in the country? But you guys know, like when you can't pitch, then the offense starts to get like, okay, we got to score 10 to win. Right. And now everybody's trying to go 4 for 3, and now a great offense becomes an average offense. And I think that's what's going on at Ole Miss. It's too many pitching injuries. They're struggling so bad on the mound. And, by the time their offense gets going, the game is already out of hand. And it just, you just can't win that way.
I mean, I agree. I lost my train of thought there, but
hey, it's jarring. But think about that, guys. This is the SEC, right? As of a week ago, A&M, who was a Final Four team last year, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, who won the last 2 national titles, they're 1-17 in the league.
Right.
After 2 weeks, you're like,
it's wild.
Meanwhile,
nuts.
South Carolina's 6th in the country, and Kentucky's got 1 loss or 2 losses in the SEC. Like it's just.
And not only were they supposed to be good based off of what they've done recently, like they brought back players too.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's that you watch Mississippi State play, and you're like, you line that roster up and just say to coaches, hey, you can have any of those players. They're like, I'll have 15 of them, right? Like everybody would recruit these kids. But for whatever reason, and again, when you get hurt on the mound, I think the 2 biggest things is when you have pitching injuries and if you have bad catching, your whole season can implode. And I think that you see that across college baseball. The teams that are struggling, it's either an issue at catcher or just playing catch in general, or you're struggling on the mound.
Playing catch, I like that. Playing catch in general.
One more chance. I don't want to get you in trouble with LSU fans any more than you already are. But
yes, you do.
Yeah, well,
that didn't seem very sincere.
You're lucky that the LSU women's basketball team took off for you to had all the attention on you.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
you're lucky that you're not dialed into Tiger droppings every day.
Yeah, don't go there.
Thank you. I'll let Kendall do that.
Yes, but my question is, you talked about having. Possibly, it seems as if LSU will have the number 1 pick and number 2 pick in the draft. If LSU doesn't win the national championship, is that considered a failure of the season?
Ooh, man,
that's going to be a massive talking point.
Yeah, I think that's hey, first of all, 1 and 2's never been done. And this is from your guys' era where the highest drafted teammates ever are Garrett Cole in 2011 went 1, and then Bauer went 3. So we've never had 1 and 2. I would say this, like if you think of the last 3 completed seasons, UCLA was number 1 in 19. Michigan took them down in a super. Arkansas was unbelievable in 2021. NC State took them down in a super. And then, last year with Tennessee getting taken out by Notre Dame in a super. I just don't think if you get to Omaha, you've had a great season. I think saying a season that ends in Omaha is a bad year is disingenuous. It's so hard to get there. But I think if LSU doesn't win the national title this year, Jay Johnson will feel like, man, that was a missed opportunity because we had a national title team. Now, whether you can be hot in the tournament and stay healthy and all that stuff's a different conversation, but you will feel like there was a chance and you missed it.
So do you feel like if the team, in your mind, if you're getting to Omaha, it's a good season, maybe you missed a chance. But if you get to Omaha and you go 0-2, is that a different conversation?
I mean, that's really disappointing. Like, I think that's a lot of sleepless nights. I just think, like, if you're Jay Johnson and the trajectory he's got LSU baseball on, it's the old Tiger Woods thing in majors, right? Like, didn't Tiger Woods say, hey, my goal in a major is just keep giving myself chances because if I give myself a chance, I'm going to win a boatload of them. Like, I think that's what Jay Johnson's going to do at LSU, and then he's going to win, however many national titles he's going to win, but he's going to just keep getting the Tigers to Omaha. And then, look at Florida in the decade you guys played in. Like, Florida went to Omaha 7 times in 10 years. That's a joke. Like, it's not that easy.
Right.
But they did it. They only won one of them. But I think that's the thing. Like, there's so many things that can trip you up in Omaha. There's so many things that got to go right. You just got to keep getting there, and then the team that's going to win it's going to win it.
The one that they won hurts a little bit too. That one hurts the LSU fans as well. So
yeah, I hear you.
Just keep pouring salt in the wound, but it's okay.
Gosh, I'm having a bad day. Gosh,
no, I'm just messing.
Gracious.
Look, I appreciate your time.
Contact info off the screen.
yeah. One more quick question before you go. I know you're busy, man. Y'all have a podcast that y'all are about to start doing a little bit, but we spoke a little bit about the SEC. We spoke about some of these teams that are kind of some surprises. I mean, there's a gauntlet, right? Like, LSU started with A&M, who was a preseason top 10 team, top 5 team. You had Tennessee, who's 10. You had Arkansas, who's top 5. We played them. Now you have to go to South Carolina, who nobody thought was going to be ranked. You go to Kentucky, or you play Kentucky at home the next weekend. There's a gauntlet outside of LSU right now. And, is there a challenger to winning the SEC? Obviously, LSU's still not in the lead, right? They have 3 losses in the SEC. They've won 3 series, but they haven't gotten swept. Is there a challenger that you think they could maybe run away with it based off schedule, or based off who they've played or who they haven't played?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like, in the beginning of the year, we were kind of saying, hey, Florida, Tennessee, LSU are the 3 best teams. And now LSU has separated themselves from those 2. And then I think Kentucky and South Carolina are very, very good. I think they're Omaha caliber clubs. But do I think they could win the SEC over LSU? I don't think so. Yeah. Unless South Carolina, it would be mandatory for them to win the series this weekend. And, I don't know. Can they do that? We'll see. But I think I could see Florida going on a run, just tearing off a bunch of wins and giving, kind of putting some pressure on LSU. That would be the team. I think Florida is so talented. They're the one team that could press LSU, but they're a little messy right now. Like, I don't know. I kind of think it's LSU in the field right now. I agree.
I'm not biased. I'm trying not to be. I'm trying not to be biased. Before I let you go, you mentioned the South Carolina LSU series. You said it's mandatory for South Carolina to win it. What's your prediction on this weekend? Does LSU take the series? Do they sweep? The South Carolina upset? What do you have?
I think LSU wins the series, but South Carolina wins a game.
What game do they win?
I would say
Thursday and get everybody upset.
So South Carolina is going to throw their ace, Sanders. And LSU's throwing Skenes on Thursday, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They'll bump him up. Well, he threw Thursday last week, so that's perfect. Yeah. So Skenes will beat Sanders, I think. I mean, the easy answer is Sunday. Hey, Sanders is a tough kid. Like, he could trade punches with Skenes, but I just think, I don't know. I'm really curious to see if South Carolina is ready for this Thursday night. I think they'll get themselves into the series, but I mean, as electric as it was last week for you all, man, I think tomorrow night's even more electric. Like, Tennessee kind of was limping in a little bit. I mean, I know they swept A&M, but they're not really the same swaggy team they were last year. South Carolina is digging themselves.
Yeah.
Like, that place is going to be fired up. I can't wait to see tomorrow
and that's
night.
A great stadium to play at. Now, it's a dangerous stadium to play at. Now, LSU they're offensively, they're very talented. South Carolina, obviously, but that stadium is a great place to hit. So anything can really happen there. Like, poke a couple balls, he gets caught up in the jet stream, he gets out of there. Like, I'm with you. I think it's going to be an electric series. We got to play there in 2009 when they opened that stadium, and it was awesome. It was one of my favorite places that we got to play. So I'm with you. Y'all got anything else, boys? Runes, I appreciate you, dude. I appreciate you coming on the show. Anytime you want to come back on, we'd love to have conversation. I love talking baseball, even Major League Baseball. Baseball. We'll talk ball as the season goes on.
Next time I step on myself on Twitter, I'll give you a call. We can maybe.
We'll just be watching for it instead.
Yeah, next time I'm gonna have you on before you step on yourself, so you don't have to worry about that. It's not just I don't want to take advantage of your missteps.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate
good to see you guys.
You too.
Good stuff.
You too.
Thanks.
Yep.